I'm David Park from the University of Nottingham, and today's video is all about raising money and modelling cash flows and finance. So the reality is, although it might not be the most exciting area, this is one of the most critically important things that you must do and must make some effort to undertake if you want to increase your chances of successfully launching your business or charity or organisation, or convince others to invest in you or support you or work with you. So modelling the cash in and out of your new venture is critical. What we're going to do in this video is talk about cash flow. This is not an accounting video. Accounting is important. There are certain aspects of accounting you must get right. Always seek appropriate advice, please. But for the purposes of this and the purposes of if you're starting out, modelling the cash flow, the money coming in and out, the cash, is actually the most critical first stage. If you don't get that right, you don't have a successful organisation. The accounting is wasted. So we'll explore some sources of funding and we'll show you some techniques that will get you started. There are lots of others, there's lots of information online and elsewhere. Find something that works for you. So, what will you need to actually realise whatever it is you're trying to do? The reality is it'll be different for everyone and that will change over time, but you're probably going to need access to some people with different skills. You might need some equipment, you might need some raw materials, you're going to need some contacts, external or internal to your organisation. You're going to need to be credible, you're going to need time. There'll be a whole suite of things you need. Many of these are only possible if you have money. So at some point you are going to need some money to do something. So where might you find some of this money? There are lots of legal sources. We'll go through some of these. We'll try and explore some of the pros and cons of each, but do spend time thinking about this. Always get appropriate advice before embarking on any sort of financial decision if that's appropriate for you and your organisation. So the first one that many folk take is the 3 Fs, friends, families, and let's call them fools. The money is not usually vast. It might just be a few pounds, a few £1,000s. And it might not be in return for a stake in an organisation. It might have no strings attached at all. But it's often the first way that people will actually get some investment or some money to enable them to get something started. Another source which is becoming increasingly important around the world is crowdsourcing. There are some well-known crowdsourcing websites. There are actually hundreds and hundreds in the UK alone. Elsewhere around the world there are thousands. Many of those specialise in a distinct niche area. So if you're operating in a charity or a business in a certain sector or a certain geographical area, do look online and see if there are any crowdsourcing sites that are relevant to you. And the chances of success of you raising money on those may be higher, can't guarantee it, if you choose a crowdsourcing site that is specific to your area and your geographical area. Another way you can get money is through banks, loans, credit cards, mortgages. They tend to want repaying at some point. That's no bad thing. They might require you to actually put an asset on the table in return for that money. So always get financial advice before you undertake any of these decisions. Next, you've heard of angel investors. These tend to be wealthy individuals or groups of wealthy individuals who come together to invest in things that interest them. They are interested in making money back. They tend to want to be slightly more hands-on in terms of the operation or certainly the strategy of an organisation or entity that they will invest in. Try and identify angels who align with your goals, your ideals. Try and find angels who bring something to the table that is not just the money or the cash. It could be experience, it could be connections, it could be credibility in a certain sector. All of those things potentially increase your chance of success. Angels will want repaying at some point. It might be 5-7 years. They might want 3 or 5 times their money back. It's completely different depending on who you speak to. Depending where you are in the world, there are sometimes tax incentives for angels to invest in small companies and charitable activities. So do look online for the territory that you're currently in. For example, in the UK, there are schemes that encourage investors to put up to £150,000 into entities and give them some tax breaks on capital gains relief, etc. That might change over time, so be careful. Always look online and seek advice. Another source that you'll often hear about and see in films and on the TV is venture capitalists. The reality is that most folk will never even speak to a venture capitalist organisation or a VC firm. They won't get any funding from them. They're not fit for purpose. They're not aligned with what a VC wants, which simplistically is rapid growth, quick exit within perhaps 5 years, with perhaps a tenfold or more return on the investment. The criteria for getting the money are high and hard to meet. And it's a tough gig. You're going to be under pressure to deliver if you take VC money. You can use VC money to scale quickly. You can go through tiers of VC investment. There are organisations, for example, near the University of Nottingham where we are, who have 3 or 4 different tiers of VC funding depending what stage you're at and whether it's 20,000 you need or 2 million or more. That again, look around your area. Look for VCs who are working in the area that you are operating in. They will specialise in a sector, they will specialise in a geography. Another source of money could be charities or foundations. Depending whether you're a company or a social enterprise or a charity, some of your chances of getting this funding might or might not be easier. Some of the money could be very high, some of it might not need to be repaid, some of it might come with additional support, it might not just be cash. So have a look and see if there are any charities or foundations in your region or country, or maybe even internationally, who would like to support the sorts of things you're trying to do. Other sources of cash that might or might not be there, or certainly business support. And when I say business, I mean company, charity, social enterprise. If I say business, I mean all of those. So governments, regional governments, national governments, maybe even the European Union, maybe not, we'll see. There will be some support to try and support organisations to start, to grow, to employ people and to export. Some of that could be cash, it could be introductory services, it could be business networking services, it could be help with things like import and export. So again, look in your region, look online, there will be lots of help that you can access, initially for free, from governments, regional, national and beyond. Don't forget as well, if you're already trading, or you're linked to somebody who is already trading, you might not need to get external investment. You might actually get the investment and the money you need from retained earnings. It might be an internal business case you have to make to get your organisation to invest in your thing. You might not need to go externally at all. Obviously, there's lots of other sources of money, there's lots of other sources of finance. We've only just briefly touched on all of these, but have a look through each of them. Look online, look at the pros and cons. There's lots of videos, there's lots of articles that explore some of these issues, but whatever you do, try and align your needs, your desires, your aspirations as an organisation to the type and source of funding that you're going after. So it's important to choose the right finance for you and your organisation at the stage you're at, and also very much depending on what type of organisation you are and where you're looking to go. Are you a charity? Are you a company? Are you an absolute brand new startup? Have you been trading for a few years and already turning over a reasonable amount? Do you need just cash? Do you need something other than money? Strategic alignment, strategic connections? What are your goals? Do you want to grow big and exit by being sold or bought by somebody else? Or do you just want to grow steadily and make a difference for a long time to come? You need to align whatever it is that you're wanting to do with the external partners you might work with. That's not from a business perspective, it's just financial, it's everything. What do you want to do? What are you trying to do? What's the right source of partnership for you? Another way of looking at this, people talk about the valley of death. So that's a phrase you might hear, or even the rather exotically titled trough of disillusionment, which sounds awful. In our made-up company or organisation, we start getting some money in, we need to do some development, we're not selling anything in yet, we're not making any money yet, and so the amount of money we're spending keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we try and develop our thing. At some point, all being well, we launch our product or our service, and we start to make some money, but we're still spending more than we're getting in. And so our actual net financial position keeps getting worse. And at the bottom of that valley of death, it's the point that we turn around. We actually start making more money in than we're spending. And over time, if all goes well, eventually you'll have made back all the money that you've spent since you started. And that's what this graph shows. And depending where you are, and it's never as nice and neat as this, by the way. It's always a bit up and down, and sometimes it can be long, sometimes short. Wherever you are in there, different types of funding and support might be more appropriate for you. And each of those will have different pros and cons. So at the very early stage, it might be that you work with a university to do some fundamental R&D, and you don't have to put any money in at all, or very little. As you get further and further, the product is launched, the support available to you is more commercial in nature. There might still be support, but it could be more focused on growing sales, or sorting out some marketing collateral, or introducing you to folk who can help you grow your business. So have a look into the valley of death. Have a think about where you are at through this graph. Have a look at what you need as a business or an organisation, depending where you're at. It's perfectly possible to grow a business successfully without ever taking any investment at all. Don't be afraid to consider that option. I've started a community interest company, for example, where we had some support to make a difference on a local issue, and we did that without taking any external investment at all. We could run the business, set up the website, do what we needed to do without ever having to actually get into the valley of death at all. I'd like you to become obsessed with cash flow, as opposed to accountancy or any of the marketing or the other really exciting things that most folk want to get into. You must know how much cash are you getting into your organisation and when. How much cash is going out? How much have you got in the bank? Because bluntly, if that bank value goes below zero, it's game over. Too many organisations that I go into to try and help, you ask, well, how much money have you got? And they don't know. How much are you spending? How much are you getting through each month? I don't know. And so you can model this. Before you even start your organisation, you can create a basic cash flow, and I'll show you some tools to do that later. You can model different scenarios. You can actually do some what if. What if we make more money? What if costs are greater? What if things are delayed? And you can see what the impact will be on your business and your current version of your business plan. It might be that you then have to change some of the aspects of your business plan depending on what you find. But whatever you do, please do this and continue to do it as you grow your organisation. Depending on what you're doing, you're going to have some costs. I've put some suggestions up on the screen here of some of the things that you might want to think about. This will be different for every single person and it will change over time. So I can't possibly sit here and say you'll definitely have all of these. There will be others. There will be some other costs that we haven't listed here. I've seen a list which had over 80 different potential costs in it. I'm not going to put that up, but please be aware you need to model all of the potential sources of expenditure for you and your organisation based on what you're trying to do. You also need to identify potential sources of income. So this isn't just start-up cash or initial investment, although that is important and that feeds in, that is income. It could be grants, it could be loans, it could be that you actually sell something. At some point you sell a good or a service. Whether you're selling it profitably or not is a different question, although quite an important one. You might also, and this will change over time, be able to access some government tax incentives or other sources of cash. So for example, at the moment there's a quite attractive R&D tax credit that you can use, whether you're making a profit or not. Some of these things do change over time, so do check the region or country you're operating in based on the current time and see what's available. If in doubt, there are lots of organisations who can provide you with professional advice and help on some of these aspects. Please also think about the lead time, so the difference from when you send an invoice and it actually gets paid. The worst I ever had was from a large European organisation that took 18 months to pay an invoice. That will absolutely ruin your organisation if everyone takes you 18 months to pay. Typically 2 weeks, a month, 3 months. There's lots of different ways of doing it depending on the sector you're in and what you can get away with. But you need to model that because when you're modelling your cash flow, you might do the work, but you might not be getting the money for it for some time to come. And so that's one of the things you need to explore. How can I optimise my business position by getting as much money in as soon as I can? So there's lots of different ways of modelling cash flow. Just to get us going and to move this video forward, I've created a very basic Excel spreadsheet solution because in terms of the cash flow, you need to know, can I cover the costs as they arise? Will this organisation survive for a few months, for a few years in the long term, assuming that's actually something that's important to you? Are you actually profitable, if that's something that matters? Will you generate a surplus, and if so, when? A lot of the information that you can model and create will then become a part of any pitch for investment or some of your basic business planning tools. When will you break even? What's your profit and loss situation? That will all derive from this basic cash flow. So you've modelled some cash flow, yeah, you've perhaps generated some scenarios, you've looked at some what-ifs, you've optimised it. It may be that you need to go and get some investment. That could be a loan, it could be from a business angel or venture capital organisation. Who knows? All these scenarios we looked at earlier. Some of those, the investors will want to get their money back. Bit boring, but it's quite important to them. Find out what timeline is important to that investor. When do they need that money back? Is it a month, a year, 3 years, 10 years? What sort of return are they looking for? Is it a loan with a bank with an agreed interest rate? Is it an aspiration with a business angel to get 3 or 5-fold their initial investment back? Is it a VC requiring 10 times plus the initial money that they put in? What you can do off the back of your cash flow is start exploring potential exit points and the potential value or return that an investor might see at each of those different investment points. And for those of you who are looking to get proper investment, that will be something that you're going to need to explore and probably model 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 different scenarios of when an investment can be recovered, what are the risks, what are the timescales. One of the other questions that often comes up is, how do I value my business? It's great doing a cash flow, it's great saying that we can grow this organisation and make some money, that an investor might get their money back, but how do I know what my business is worth? How do I actually put a value on that in terms of a potential exit or a sale to another organisation? There's lots online about this. The simple, cheeky answer is it's whatever somebody will pay you for it, which doesn't help you at all, so we'll ignore that. Sometimes people use a multiplier of your future income or your future profit, and that is very sector dependent. So some sectors I've seen this year and last, businesses valued at millions when they're losing money. So they might be bringing £10,000 in a month on a cost base of spending £100,000 a month, and they'll be valued at millions because of the sector they're in, so AI or similar things. Some valuations look at the market share or the user base that you've got and put a value on that. Some will look at similar deals. So is there anything like your business in that sort of sector in recent times? Have they sold? Have they been bought? What did they go for? Bluntly, what will the market pay? There's a whole activity. Get professional advice. Don't take the first offer that you get, but you will be able to find some ideas of what's the multipliers on income for my sector or size of business in this country. What are some of the sorts of deals of businesses or organisations like mine that have happened in recent times? And that will give you some indication of what you might be able to value your business at. So it's great talking about generating cash flow and putting numbers in, but where do you get the numbers? Lots of folk will turn around and say, well, that's great, but where do I actually get these numbers? How do I know they're real? You have to do the best you can, your best endeavour to get the sorts of numbers that make sense to you. As we saw earlier on, getting an accurate figure for a mobile phone contract is pretty easy. Modelling what you're going to be selling and how much profit you make on it in 2 years' time is not. So in terms of costs, go with your own experience. Go and ask potential suppliers or business partners, actually get real quotes for what you're trying to do. Perhaps find somebody who's already doing something in a similar area. Go and ask them. They might or might not want to share with you. There might be commercially sensitive information, so your competitor is unlikely to tell you what they're paying for things. But it's worth a go. If in doubt, go and ask. Get primary real-world data and model it to the best of your ability. In terms of income, then there's a number of ways of doing it. Once you start selling something, then you'll start getting a feel, what will the market pay? How much of this might I sell? How much profit might I make? You can go out and look at a series of secondary data, and we'll bring up a list of potential sources of that in a minute. People talk about top-down or bottom-up market segmentation. So take the whole global market and break it down into smaller and smaller chunks till you get to a size where you can actually model and get some data. Or start at the bottom level, the basic unit of the thing you're selling, and start trying to work out how many of these can I sell into my local market, my national market, different sectors, different markets, etc. You might also do some pilot trials. Go and do some real actual sales of the thing you're trying to do, but on a smaller group or a smaller geographical area. Find out what the market was willing to pay. What was the time it took to close the sale? How much profit did you potentially make on each of these products or services? Weave that back into your planning. It could just be very quick and simple and easy. It might actually take many months. Lots of different ways of doing it, but have a think about doing a pilot launch as well. So in terms of secondary data, everyone can use the web, you can Google to your heart's content, have a look at annual returns, and lots of these are available for similar companies or charities. Look at sector-specific trade journals or trade conferences. They'll give you information about who's playing, what their issues are, what the size of market is, some of the factors that are affecting that sector and the trends that might affect your business. Have a look and see if there are industry bodies or charitable bodies that relate to your sector or organisation. They can help. They often have sources of information. They'll certainly be able to point you to those who might be able to help you if they've got any interest in growing their industry or sector. Have a look at the business and technology press. That could be online, it could actually be hard copies. Go and grab the FT and see what's in there. There's also lots of commercial market research reports that you can access. If you're lucky enough to be at a university, many universities, certainly here at the University of Nottingham, you can access many of these reports for free for certain purposes. Some of them you might have to pay for. But again, speak to universities, speak to trade bodies, see if you can access some of these market research reports with the caveat that some of them might be out of date and they might not exactly represent the sector or market that you're trying to get into. Lots of other sources of information, and again, we'll put some thoughts up online here, and if you find any thoughts yourself, do let us know. In terms of cash flow, in terms of finances, this is just an introductory video, but please, whatever you do produce some sort of first guesstimate cash flow forecast. Sense check this with other people that you trust. Iterate it. You'll need to explore it. You'll need to change things. Did you have too many costs? Did it take too long to launch a product? You're going to have to run some scenarios. Whatever you do that. Try and get as much real-world data as you can credibly get to support that. Please continue to do that as you grow your organisation. You will need to do that anyway. It's good business practice. Anytime you go for a pitch or to seek investment or to seek support, a summary of the key data you found will increase your chance of success. And you can visualise that in nice ways. I strongly recommend against putting a very complex, detailed Excel sheet up on a PowerPoint. Perhaps a single graph. Some sort of visualisation of the summary of what you're trying to say is far more effective. So, some key lessons. Model a cash flow, please. Run multiple scenarios, the what-ifs. Get as much real data as you possibly can. Use a bit of strategic thinking to identify the right source of finance for you, your organisation at the stage you're at, and based on what you're aspiring to do. Continue to monitor and evolve the tools that you've developed around finances throughout the life of your organisation. Thanks very much for listening. I'm David Park. That's been a quick overview of cash flows, potential sources of cash, some of the tools that will get you started on this. Whatever you do, please do something. Good luck.